And we're rolling. All right. What's up, everybody? We are back again with episode number 3 of the podcast. And we actually have a podcast name now. It's called NASCAR Round the Track with the Riders, including myself, SterlingRider, and my father. We have changed his name to a better name now, Duke Rider. So, what's up, Dad?
Going on, man?
So Daytona, it's been quite a weekend of racing.
Well, if you don't count Saturday and Sunday.
Well, yeah, Saturday and Sunday was rained out. Xfinity rained out, and then the Cup, the 500 was rained out. Both double headers yesterday on Monday. But I was still off work so I included as the weekend. Um, but yeah, weather was not nice this weekend for them.
Mm-mm. Well,
Uh,
story goes. I heard this. They even talked about it, I think, on the broadcast yesterday. Um, Story goes that they had what they called the Bill France weather, because for like the first 40, 50 years of this thing, it was never rained out. And I think the first rain out was like 2013, and there's been then of course 2020, and then I think there was one more, but I can't remember what year. But the belief goes is that Bill France had an agreement with God that it would not rain on the weekend of the Daytona 500.
yeah.
Um, so and I guess God fulfilled his part of that agreement, because it didn't rain until Brian France took over, and well, we all know what a debacle Brian had for NASCAR. But I think sometimes it's God crying. Um, More on the carnage of the 500. We'll get into that here in a little bit when we get to the Daytona 500. I've got some stats on the past 20 years, I believe, on the number of cars that have been wrecked. And of course, yesterday was, if you like that kind of thing, was no disappointment.
No, no, it wasn't. There were quite a few banged up cars at the end of the race.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Um, so even though the main race is on the weekend, of course, there's still things going on throughout the week. Wednesday was qualifying. Thursday was the duels, and then Friday you had the truck practice for Cup, and then the truck race. So
And the ARCA
qualifying
race,
and the ARCA race. Yep, the ARCA race was
yeah,
followed up from the truck race. That was a long night. Whew.
it was supposed to be before the Xfinity race, but with the rain, NASCAR, who owns ARCA now, actually made another smart decision and moved the ARCA race to Friday night. Otherwise, we'd have had a triple header on Monday. So, and it was late last night, so I'm not really sure they could have got a triple header in.
I don't think they could have. Um, but yeah, quite weather was a big factor, but NASCAR pulled it off, so props to that. Um, yeah, like I said, full week of being at the track, so
So qualifying was interesting. I don't know what you thought. The Fords, it's been quite a long time. I think it was 2012 was the last time Ford was on the front row of the Daytona 500. Fords were fast. I was impressed with Michael McDowell,
oh yeah.
second fast. Logano being on the pole, Ford being on the pole surprised me, but it being Logano was not a big surprise. I mean, that's the kind of track that he's good at. That's the kind of track that those Roush Yates engines are built for. Yates has always had a powerhouse. Going back to when Davey Allison was driving the car back in the late 80s and early 90s, man, Yates was always putting an engine in those super speedway cars that would outrun most teams. But the Fords were surprising as far as the amount of speed that they had. Chevy was surprising by the amount of speed they didn't have.
Yep.
And Toyota did what Toyota always does. They go out and they don't qualify well. Um, but and it's funny because they always seem to qualify where they're clumped together, where there's two or three of them clumped together, and the others aren't too far behind, so it doesn't take them long to find each other on track. But um, man, it set the lineups for the duels. Uh, of course, I was again with the Toyotas not showing speed in qualifying. Um, and the Ford showing speed in qualifying. When it came to the duels, it was a completely different story.
Oh yeah, yeah. The duels because once Toyota linked up, they took off and
They
they
did.
they showed speed as a group. So that was definitely a game changer.
Won both the duels with Tyler Reddick winning the first one and Christopher Bell winning the second duel.
Yep.
Which the stat on that was that they both only won one lap. Of course, it's the only one that matters is the
Yeah.
final lap.
Yeah.
And then the other cool stat that I found on there, and if you want to follow, you want to know something about stats on NASCAR, check out, of course, Jayski on Twitter, or you can check out jayski.com. But there's also a guy on Twitter. His name is Trey Ryan, and man, I've got a bunch of stats that he put together that we're going to look at throughout the course of the show. But Reddick and Bell were the first two in the history of the duels. It's the first time in the history of the duels that both winners came from outside the top 15. So that just kind of goes to show you that Toyota knows what they're doing when it comes to racing.
Hey, yes, that is true.
Anyway, right.
And
So
then so them winning the duels and then the next day them practicing together, um, also showing a lot of speed, being super fast. It made me
yeah, I mean,
question. It made me question how my fantasy lineup was.
well, you mentioned fantasy lineup. I went and changed my fantasy lineup because of the results in the duels. Unfortunately, it bit me yesterday because I took a couple of the Chevrolets out that I had in and put a couple of Toyotas in. And then I put Tyler Reddick in my garage, and that was just a waste of a use of the garage because he ended up getting wrecked anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought the duels were the duels. I didn't see anything surprising in the duels. Um, over the past several years, there's been a lot of aggression in the duels. It used to not be that aggressive. Of course, it was a different package in those days, and um, fields sometimes weren't quite as close together, so there wasn't as much need for aggression. But there was a couple wrecks. 6 cars went to a backup car.
Yep.
Uh, that in-car camera, man, of Ryan Blaney when he hit, man, he hit hard.
He did.
Um, he and even in the 500, the wreck that they showed the in-car of his wreck in the 500, and it was another hard hit. He took a couple hard licks this weekend, but he hung in there. And in his interview after the race yesterday, because they showed the in-car of the race showed him grabbing his wrist, and he said that his wrist was fine. He actually said that the impact in the 500 was not as hard as the impact in the duels. And man, that impact in the duels though, that was head on.
That was. Yeah.
Unfortunately, his car hit pretty much at the same angle that Dale Earnhardt's hit. Fortunately, with all the safety advances that they've come up with, Ryan was able to get out and walk away from that wreck.
Yep.
That was the only really surprising thing to me about the duels. What about you?
Um, Toyota's showing speed was surprising, but them winning, not really. Um, Now I wouldn't have picked Bell to win duel number two. Reddick I could see. Reddick's proven himself. Bell's proven himself as well, but I wouldn't have had him picked to win a super speedway of any type, really. But the duels, there were few wrecks. 6 people going to backup cars. That includes the former champion Ryan Blaney. William Byron went to a backup car. Kyle Busch went to a backup car, and a few others. Um, but that just shows you that even in smaller groups, you can still get caught up in quite a wreck at this track.
And it also, those teams going to backup cars and how well they performed in the 500 shows you that backup cars today are just as good as the car that they rolled off the truck with first at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they all led at one point.
Yep.
Christopher Bell led, Ryan Blaney led, Kyle Busch led, William Byron led. I mean, they all, even with their backup cars, they all ran really, really strong. So, but it just put more work on the teams, really, is what it was.
Yeah.
They had to scramble to get ready for practice and stuff like that. So, those guys in the garage, they're hard workers. They don't get enough credit for what they have to do on a weekend, or well, during the week even.
That is true. They do put a lot of work into those cars, and to turn around automatically and get that backup car ready, I know can be tiring. So definitely props to the people behind the scenes, because it's not just the drivers, it's the whole crew that make the racing possible. So
yep. So the duels, that set the lineup for the 500, and we'll go over that pretty much when we get to the 500 and look at what that looked like. But moving to Friday, and I took a lot of notes during the race. I'm not going to go through all of them because we'll be here all day if I try to go through if I go through all my notes, because especially my notes from Friday night, because Friday night both races. Man, I've been to demolition derbies at the fair before that had less wrecked vehicles in it than the truck and ARCA races.
Yeah, there were quite a few banged up trucks and cars. So
and of course we'll talk about this more in a little bit too, but it's the trucks. The truck race is having an impact on the number of trucks that are going to Atlanta this week.
Oh yeah.
So that's not, I don't know who came up with this idea to have 2 super speedway drafting type tracks back to back, but these smaller teams, man, they're not going to be, they only had 1 truck and they don't have time to go back and rebuild that 1 truck and get it ready by Thursday, qualifying on Friday, I think it is. Yeah, because it's a doubleheader on Saturday. So these smaller teams, they don't have the manpower to do it. I mean, some of them only have like 1 or 2 crew members, full-time crew members, so they can't do that. But man, the truck race, it started on lap 6.
Oh yeah, automatically.
I mean, just a head scratcher. What are y'all doing? It's lap 6.
It shows you that even with a long race, the truck drivers don't play around. They don't play it safe. They're constantly aggressive, which can be a good thing. It makes the sport entertaining and fun to watch. But at the same time, you got to be careful as you don't tear up your truck so you can last till the end of the race, especially at Daytona, because that's a big track and that's a long race.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be careful. Now listen to this stat, and this is one of those Trey Ryan stats that I told you about. It says 2023 had the highest percentage of races under caution in Truck Series history. 30% of every race in 2023 ran under caution.
Wow.
We started out 2024 very similar. There was a lot of cautions. And it's, I don't know. I don't know what the problem is, but it's just not good. I know it's a win and you're in to the playoffs mentality. I know aggressive driving is rewarded with stage cautions, or with the stage points and the playoff points and all that comes with that. I know a lot of these kids that are driving in the truck series are I'm not going to use the term unqualified, because they're winners. They've won somewhere, but they're young, and sometimes I guess what you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah. I,
So Dave Moody, he does. I think he's MRN, Motor Racing Network. He said these kids need to learn that knocking each other out of the way in turn one of a 100-lap race isn't smart. He said they're playing Russian roulette with 5 bullets in the chamber. I mean, I get aggression. I appreciate aggression. I Again, if I wanted to watch a demolition derby, they don't last as long, and you can go have a corn dog and a funnel cake and some popcorn at the state fair, and those cars are already beat up. They're not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep those things out there.
yeah. There is some understanding to it, aggressiveness. Everyone wants to win Daytona. It's a historic track. It's one of the biggest tracks in NASCAR, one of the biggest events
Yep.
in that in sporting period. So I understand it, but you also got to look at it. It's first off, they go to Daytona twice, so you put that in a factor, and second off, you don't have to win it to I understand you want to automatically be in the playoffs right away, but there's still other tracks that if you know you're much stronger at, I would just wait till those tracks to get myself into the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, and it's one of those things, but it's I don't know. It was when they were racing and they were being aggressive and they weren't wrecking. It was a great race.
Oh yes.
It was. I mean, they were, and there were some good saves. Some trucks that probably should have wrecked that didn't. And I enjoyed the racing part of it, but I'm not much for the wrecking. It's over aggressive sometimes,
Yeah.
So, um, what was that? Is that an 80-lap race?
100 lap.
Was it
The
100 laps? Okay.
truck and Arco
Yeah.
were both 100 lap.
Okay. Man, on lap 6, and then even halfway on lap 57, they had cautions come out, and then on lap 70, and I mean they had, but there was opportunities where um, you know they could have, if they were racing smart. The only cautions in the first half of the race would have been the stage cautions. That they wouldn't have had these wrecks, because to win it you got to be in it. And if you're wrecking on lap 6 or 25 or 50, trying to get a position, I understand again the stage points and stuff like that, but is a stage point is stage points really worth not finishing the race?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because like I said earlier, you don't want to tear up your truck and then still not finish the race. Just based off stage points. Stage points definitely help, especially when coming into the with the playoff standings. Points help a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but you get more points for finishing the race than you do just in a stage. So you gotta remember that as well. You can't tear up your truck trying to get just a couple of stage points when you could benefit more by just finishing the race
Yep.
in a better position.
Yep. So wrapping up the truck race, they had the green white checkered. The 71 and the 7 took off, got out
Took
way too
off.
far. Corey LaJoie had been pretty aggressive, and Rajah Caruth was being pretty aggressive. But in this part, they were aggressive, kind of together, and were able to get out. But when you get a big lead at Daytona, man, that the pack just swallows you back up as they
Yep.
did into turn 1 and 2. And then I don't know if the 71 got loose coming out of turn 2, or if he got bumped from behind, or if he just was in driving over his head. But Caruth, he caused wrecked 80% of the field there on the backstretch.
Yeah. From what I saw, it
Yeah.
looked like because Corey LaJoie was still pushing him, and those two, they're both Spire, so they're both teammates. It looked like to me Corey had hit his bump was bump drafting him in the back, and then he just hit him kind of off centered, and it made Caruth get kind of wobbly, and then that's when it all happened.
That's usually the way it happens, especially
Which
when, I mean, they talk about it all the time. Do not touch in the corners. Don't
yeah,
touch coming out of the corner. And that's right where it happened. I mean, they came up on the straightaway right out of turn 2, and next thing you know, the field's wrecking.
yep. And Caruth especially because he's still I know he's still kind of new to all of this. He's upcoming. He's a newer face. I think he has potential, but when you get someone like Corey LaJoie with him, who's a veteran with this stuff, you got to understand him being the newer face. You got to be careful because he doesn't have that experience to keep the truck under control when you get a push like that in the corner of your truck.
Exactly. So, but it was a crazy wreck. The 17, once again, we're at Daytona. We get a truck that gets airborne.
Yep.
Tanner Gray, he landed on top of some trucks. I don't know if you saw the in-car camera from Daniel Dye, but that was a pretty wicked.
That was an interesting view. I will point out, it seems like every time I watch a super speed truck race, somebody ends up upside down. And I feel bad because I feel like I'm the reason why, because I'm watching the race.
Well, man, they build them so they'll stay on the ground. But I mean, because if you watch the wreck, the back of his truck was jacked up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this wasn't a case of him spinning around and flipping over. This was just a case of there was a truck drove up underneath him, jacked him up, and the wind caught the truck and carried him on over.
Over he went.
But again, everybody walked away thanks to the safety that's built into these vehicles. Nick Sanchez in the number 2 truck went on to win.
Yep.
That is a former KBM entry, but Spire has bought a lot of KBM stuff, Kyle Busch Motorsports, and so the 2 truck went over with that. So technically, he is kind of a teammate to the Spire guys.
Yeah.
Chevy's 100th win at Daytona.
Well, look at that.
So that's a pretty crazy stat. Earnhardt's have probably about 50 of those. And then Tony Stewart has a lot, and Jeff Gordon has a lot. But yeah, it was a truck race. I guess that's what we could say.
Yep, pretty much.
Congratulations to Nick and the 2 team starting the year out strong. He had a really good year last year, I think he did. And started out strong this year with the win. He's in the playoffs. I would have liked to have seen him race to the line, but it's super speedway racing. I mean,
yep.
I don't think. Well, the ARCA series was the only series that made it to the final lap. So
yeah.
I guess we need to move on to the ARCA series race. They moved.
Not much difference from the truck race, to be honest with you.
Nope, they started on lap 4 and wrecked 10 cars.
Yep. A lot of
Now there were
cautions.
some big names in this race. Justin Bonsignor.
Yep.
If you watch the NASCAR Modified Series, you're very familiar with Justin. He's come through the ranks a lot like Ryan Preece. Him and Ryan Preece had a rivalry going on there for a while.
Yeah.
I think that was when you latched on to Preece a little bit. It was when they
I
were going at it in
probably.
the um, Marco Andretti, grandson of Mario Andretti,
Well, big.
um, trying his hand at the trucks. We had Shane Van Gisbergen, who's worked his way over here from the supercars in Australia, won the Chicago Street Race Cup race last year.
Yep.
He's running some on and off truck races and cup races, running the full series Xfinity schedule. Didn't qualify for the race, which was a shocker. But then a car got disqualified and it got SVG in the race. So some big names going on. Jake Finch, who's the son of James Finch, who was in the Cup Series owner for a long time. Brad Keselowski got his first win in the James Finch 09 car back in 09, I want to say, which kind of launched propelled his career. And so we had Greg Van Alst, who broke his back last year in a truck race.
Yeah.
Come and he also won the Daytona ARCA race last year. So he was in the field. And Willie Mullins, don't know much about him. Just because sometimes I don't get a chance to watch all the ARCA races. Up until last year, a lot of the ARCA races weren't even on TV. Now they got the full schedule on FS1 and FS2, so can watch it a little bit more. But he was on the pole in a number 3 Ford. Oh, that's almost like putting a number 3 on a Toyota. But anyway, they wrecked on lap 4. 3 more single car cautions before lap 25. SVG was caught up. Ginsbergen, I'm just going to call him SVG because it's just easier to say.
That's fair.
He was caught up in that lap 4 caution. He came back out on track on lap 30 to get some experience because he was going to be running the Xfinity race. So, as much on track time as he could get. They had the halftime caution, scheduled caution at halfway. They restarted with 34 to go. There was a couple of great saves. The 68 car, Gil Linster, on lap 50, he almost spun out. That was a wreck that could have happened, but he saved it. It was a nice save. A couple laps later, Mullins had a really cool save. And when I say save, I mean these cars were wrecked. But some way, somehow, those drivers were able to not wreck.
Yeah.
They saved it. They pulled it out. They had the big one. A lot of people involved. They had to red flag the race. They had a couple more cautions. And it came down to a 1-lap shootout, which is ARCA has they do it one time and one time only. They don't do the green-white checkered. They throw the green and white at the same time. If caution comes out, they do a 1-lap shootout, which is I don't think that would work in the Xfinity. I think it would work in the Truck Series. I don't think it would work in the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series just because those cars take so much longer to get up to speed.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the interesting part of the race because they had agreed to a teammate restart, which if you're not familiar with that term, that means that you've got 2 teammates They do have starting with, because they have double file restarts in the ARC series. They start two teammates. They start side by side, and one teammate. I don't know how they choose which teammate. Most of the time it's the teammate that's been leading. Will be able to, the teammate that's going to be in second is going to somehow slow his line down so that the other teammate can pull up in front of them, and then they'll go on and try to race out between themselves. So Gus Dean and Jake Finch had that agreement, and the green flag flew, and it all went out the window.
Yep, it did.
First 100 feet.
Yeah. That sucks. I know Freddie Kraft even tweeted on it about saying that they were planned on it, but it went out the window basically. So that just shows you. I understand, again, being Daytona. It's Daytona. Everyone wants to win Daytona, but at the same time, you should work as a team. I think Jake Finch deserved that win. In my opinion, he had been dominating the whole race pretty much. But Gus Dean had said, "Nope, I'm gonna take it," and Jake ended up getting wrecked as they came to the finish line. So
Yeah, and another car, number 2 car, got airborne.
yep.
Again, ridiculous. But Gus Dean wins. He gives Venturi Motorsports their 100th ARCA win. That's a big deal for any team. You know, I know Kyle Busch, with Kyle Busch Truck Team last year, celebrated 100 truck wins. Reached that milestone before they sold off. But Gus, I just give you my opinion on this teammate restart stuff. In the middle of the race, up to 10 laps to go, okay, I'll do your teammate restarts. If it's under 10 laps to go, my job, my sponsors pay me. Of course, now in ARCA, we're talking a little bit different, because though a lot of those guys in ARCA are paying the owners to drive those cars. They're not sponsored drivers. They just bring a little bit of money to help put them in that car. But I'm going to get more money for my car if my car crosses the finish line first.
Mm-hmm.
What I winning a race, the purse that I win may be able to get me in another race down the road. Finishing second place, that purse may not get me anywhere. It may get me back home. I'm not paying, and if I'm paying for a ride, I'm not paying to run second. So I'm fine with the teammate restart up until 10 laps to go. I'll do whatever you want me to do, but 10 laps to go, man, I'm going for the win. And on a 1-lap shootout, I don't think Gus Dean did anything wrong, except for agreeing to it in the first place.
Yeah.
If he didn't want to do it, and he knew he didn't want to do it when he agreed to it, he just should have said, no, I think we're at the point of the race to where it's every man for himself. If he gets in front of me, I'll push him to the win, but he's going to have to work to get in front of me. I'm not going to just let him in.
Yeah.
Now if we're racing for 15th, that's a different story. But we're racing for the win at Daytona. Wins at Daytona in the ARCA series, wins at Daytona in the Truck series, wins at Daytona even in the Xfinity series, has propelled drivers' careers for decades, because they're able to get a ride in the upper series and they're able to move up. And we go back and we look at Brad Keselowski's win at Talladega in 2009 with James Finch. And that Penske signed him because of that win.
Yep.
Had he not gotten that win, because Hendrick had him lined up to be in the 5 car when Mark Martin retired. So if he'd have been in that, if he hadn't gotten that win, he wouldn't have got signed by Penske, and I don't think he'd have had the success that he's had.
Right. Which makes sense.
So, you're going for the win. It's Daytona.
Yeah.
So anyway, you got any thoughts on the ARCA race? I mean, I know you're not much.
Uh,
Uh,
Not really. I understand. I will throw in. I understand why Gus Dean did what he did. I don't understand why he agreed to it and then didn't. Like I agree with you. You shouldn't agree with it if you know you're not going to do it. But I understand he was racing as his grandfather had passed away. He was racing for that reason. So I understand. But like I said, don't agree to something you're not going to do.
exactly.
But tough break for Jake Finch. He had been leading that whole race, but congrats to Gustine. I know that was big for him and his family winning that. So that's all my thoughts on the ARCA race. A lot like truck race, lot of yellow, but
A lot of yellow, and of course red flag. It's been a while since I've seen an ARCA race at a super speedway where there wasn't a red flag. Um, Now Gus had caused that big wreck on lap 6. He was right in the middle of that, got into his teammate, but of course she called him out.
yeah,
She called him out on it in her interview, but he goes on to win the race. So um, yeah, it was an ARCA race.
yep, it was, it was indeed,
Uh, a lot of those drivers we won't see again until Talladega.
probably.
I don't know. We may see. No, they're not running in Atlanta. We may see them, but most of them don't run. A lot of the drivers that run Daytona don't run all season, so um, we'll see them again. I guess probably Talladega, maybe Charlotte. Uh, Big races. We'll see. And then we come to Saturday, and they were able to get Xfinity qualifying in.
Yep.
Uh, which I know they were hoping to get the race in, and I'm glad they were able to get qualifying in, but I think they could have gotten the race in the time that they got qualifying in. But either which way, they got qualifying in. Race got moved Monday. Sunday happened. It rained Sunday, so the Cup race got moved to Monday. The Xfinity race is supposed to be before the Cup race. They get to Monday morning, and it's still raining.
Yep.
Uh, Somebody posted, I can't remember who posted it on Twitter, but somebody that I follow on Twitter posted that rain versus NASCAR has got to be the most one-sided rivalry in all of sports. So it seems like the past few years that rain has won more than the racing has. And I even sent you that meme of the jet dryer. It says today's winner is
yeah.
the jet dryer. So
Yep.
we saw that Saturday and
Well,
Sunday. So, but
well,
I want to skip the 500 and go to the Xfinity race.
that was a pretty good
Go
race.
ahead. Yeah, okay. I'm just making sure I'm following the show sheet.
Yeah. I I liked
Yeah, we
Xfinity,
show sheet
so
today, y'all.
yeah, we kind of have a schedule, a layout.
Yeah.
Unlike last time, but that's okay. We're still learning. So, um, it was a late race, obviously. Being after Cup, the sun went down during the Cup race. It was very late. Um,
Well, mid-afternoon for you.
well,
Dinner time, anyway.
yeah, just about. It ended about bedtime for me though, so of course there were a few yellows, not as many as Trucker Arca, but there was still a good amount. Quite a few banged up cars from them.
Oh,
Um, Yeah.
Well, I feel for Jesse Love, who won a lot of ARCA races last year, won the championship in ARCA, and got hired by RCR to drive the 2 car, take over for Sheldon Creed. And he goes out and he dominates. He wins the pole. Of course, Austin Hill is on the front row, but I mean, who's Austin Hill won the last 2 Xfinity races? What do you expect?
hmm
He's fast. He is fast at Daytona. He's fast at Atlanta. He's fast at Talladega. I mean, when it comes to this super speedway racing, Austin Hill is really, really, really good. Um, but Jesse Loves goes out and he dominates stage 1. They did
Yep.
have that caution where they had the 1 lap shootout, and Jesse Love beat Austin Hill to the line by centimeters.
Yeah, it was very close. Very close.
Yeah, it was almost too close to call. Um, but and they pretty much, of course, there was that one, the one, the 15, the 14, and the 91. Um, Looked like, just from my point of view, somebody slowed down. And other people behind them slowed down, and then people behind them didn't get slowed down as much. I mean, um, Torres and Deegan. I mean, Deegan said in her interview that she's like, I can't figure Daytona out. She's like, I've tried everything that there is to try here, and nothing's worked. So,
Yep.
uh, bad luck starting her Xfinity career.
Yeah.
Um, Daniel Suarez comes back down. He gets caught up in it. The 1 car gets caught up in it. The 91 car gets caught up in it. I mean, it was one of those crashes, in my opinion, that could have been avoided had they just been, like we talked about with the Truck Series, a little bit more calm at that point in the race.
hmm
So he won stage 1. We restart, and we restart on lap 36, and we got a caution on lap 37.
Yep.
2 cars coming up through the middle and gets clipped just right, like you were talking about with the Spire truck. Somebody was off center behind him, and so the 2 car was involved. The 21 car was involved. The 16 car, the AJ Allmendinger, the 20 of John Hunter Nemechek, the 35 car of Natalie Decker, the 48 car of Parker Kligerman, and the 97 car of SVG are all caught up in this. Unfortunately, the 2 pretty much ended
Yep.
their opportunity to be competitive. So then they get going again, and Austin Hill wins stage 2.
Yep.
And man, they had his nose tape. They had a lot of silver tape on the front of his nose, but
Yep.
he still had a fast car.
There was a lot of tape on that front right fender for sure.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
but they taped it up good enough because he still had a lot of speed and he won stage 2. So that just shows you RCR brought some good cars. Um, it sucks for Love that he got wrecked out in that wreck, but Hill kept on going. So winning
and
stage 2.
and RCR's been really good. Of course, they've always been really good on these types of tracks. But their Xfinity program over the past couple of years has really, really improved. There for a while, they were on top of the mountain. They seemed like they were unbeatable. I mean, several drivers, Harvick, Boyer, won championships in their Xfinity car. Austin Dillon won a championship in the Xfinity car. Um, and then it just seemed like uh, they fell apart
Yep.
again. And they started the past couple of years, they started picking it back up. But man, Austin Hill, I'm not going to go Dale Earnhardt yet on these types of tracks, but when it comes to it, he's got a lot of Dale Jr. in him for sure.
Yeah.
With his ability to read what's going on around him.
I would agree. He reads that field very, very well, for an Xfinity driver, which definitely helps in the long run. So
For sure. Well, then they restart on lap 66, and I don't know what they were thinking. But they had Jesse Love starting out front. He's missing the whole right front fender.
Yeah.
Of his car. I know, and I kind of know what they were thinking. They were thinking, well, if he starts out front, maybe somebody will pull up in front of him and he'll be able to keep track position, because when you get a car damaged like that behind another car, it's okay. But out front, but nobody pulled up in front of him. They shuffled him out. Yeah. This is where I've started getting agitated. I was already agitated from the 500 because the 500 was beforehand. But going back to talking about the cautions, there's another C word I want to throw out here, and it's commercials.
Yeah.
I'm getting, at this point, I'm getting a little fed up with the commercials. Now, good thing about the commercial breaks here, we're in the final stage. They know that pit stops are coming up. They did go side by side, which is a good thing. I'm gonna talk about this a lot when we get to the 500. But when the Xfinity Series moves over to the CW next year, I hope there's a lot less commercial breaks.
Yeah.
I understand these have bills to pay. I mean, I come from a marketing, advertising, public relations background. I know they've got bills to pay. But come on. And like I said, we're going to talk about this more when we get to the 500, because I actually had the commercial breakdown for the 500 from Jayski. But just at this point in the night, I'm seeing more commercials than I am racing.
Yeah.
And it's getting annoying.
Well, another thing I'll throw in is a lot of the commercials, they don't change. A lot of them are the same commercial, especially with us watching the 500 beforehand and then throughout the Xfinity race. There's not much difference. It's the same type of commercials, the same, which I understand. They're the ones that, were like, hey, can you commercial us during your broadcasting? But it after a while, you just kind of, you're just like, well, here we go again. It's this commercial or it's that commercial, and you can almost say some of them word for word at this point, just because of how many times they've been advertised.
Well, that's the point. That's the point behind commercials. But back when I first started watching NASCAR, I would say 85 to 90% of the commercials were based around a product that I was seeing on a race car in the race. And the driver or the team or the car itself was featured in those commercials.
Right.
And we wanted to see those commercials because sometimes those commercials gave us kind of a snapshot into a driver's everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just used the Wrangler jeans commercial that Dale Earnhardt did way back when. We saw him working on his farm. You know, um, Dale Jr. When Dale Jr. did the Wrangler commercials, it was him, doing something, where you got to wear jeans.
Mm-hmm.
The new Menards commercial with Dale Jr. and Brandon Jones. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Did it play in the 500? I know it played several times during the truck race.
I do not think it. No, I don't think it played during the 500. I don't remember it.
Okay, but okay, you get to see Dale Jr. team owner. You get to see uh, Brandon Jones, the driver that Menard sponsors. You get to see those in the commercial. It helps you relate to the store. It helps you to relate to the product. A lot of the commercials that I'm seeing these days don't relate to me. They don't relate to racing. They don't relate to NASCAR. They don't relate to me. Plus, I see a whole lot of commercials about what's coming on TV. I don't know how many times I saw the UFL commercial.
Yeah.
Uh, the I can't remember what other things, but college basketball. I saw several college basketball commercials. Uh, you advertising them, and they do it. The commentary booth is reading these commercials, showing us full screen commercials, full screen ad reads that the commentary booth is doing while there's racing. I can hear the racing going on the racetrack. Talk all you want. Show me racing. You can talk about the UFL. You can talk about college basketball. You can talk about it for 5 minutes because I can mute that if I want to. Show me the racing on the track while you're talking about
Good.
it. I don't need to know what's coming up on Fox. If I'm a fan of that sport,
You'll already
I don't
know.
need to know that. If I'm not a fan of that sport, there's a reason I'm not a fan of that sport. And some of it may be the fact that you're interrupting my racing. So anyway, that would be enough. I guess enough because, and like I say, I got the break. I actually have the breakdown of commercial time for the 500. We'll talk about it in a few minutes. But man, that last uh, pit stop cycle was, to me, that was a lot of fun to watch. There was a lot of really, really good racing. Uh, the drivers were changing lanes a lot. They were bumping a lot. They were bump drafting a lot. They were rubbing up against each other a lot. They weren't wrecking.
Right. Yeah.
It was there for the longest time. They had 3 lanes going. Some good racing. Now, and at the time they were running for fourth because you had Ryan Ellis in the 43, Garrett Smith in the 6, and Natalie Decker in the 36. I know I mentioned her in the 35 earlier, but she's actually in the 36. I don't remember who was in 35. They stayed out. They were leading by 23 seconds, but they still had to pit. And SVG, with the damage on his car, was running good. And I mean, everybody had pitted except for those front 3. And we had some good racing going on. And they were, like I said, they were 23 seconds ahead. Had they not had to pit again, man, the pack would not have caught them. So we could have seen a surprise winner, but they did have to pit. But all that good racing goes out the window, and Jeb Burton spins out.
Yep. Yeah.
Was not Jeb's fault. SVG, who is a rookie in the series, tried to fit into a hole that wasn't there.
Yep.
So he came up. He got the left rear corner panel of Burton's car, spun him out. Then he got spun out by the 26 of Sage Karam. And so that set us up for another restart on lap 103, and Ryan Sieg was leading. And man, I got to say, Ryan Sieg and his team and the 39 team, man, I've been watching them for years, and I love seeing them run up front. I've been waiting for him to win a race. It could happen anytime now. I'm a big fan of Jeremy Clements in the 51. He's won a couple of races. I've really enjoyed watching him race. And then also Jordan Anderson's team with the 27 of Jeb Burton, the 31 of Parker Ratzliff, and then Jordan was in this race. Mm-hmm. Man, I thought they were going to pull it off. But Ryan Sieg is leading on the restart. I thought they were doing really, really well. And one thing that I noticed, and this was pointed out by several people on Twitter as well, is that they sure were adding a lot of extra laps.
Yeah.
They're like, we're going to go green next time by, and then they come across the start-finish line, and the pace car still has the lights on, and Adam Alexander's like, well, we're going to add one more.
Yeah.
That got a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
There toward the end. NASCAR needs to clean that up a little bit. But anyway, kind of a side note, did you get to see the interview that Michael Waltrip had during one of those race breaks, during that caution break?
I remember, who was it with? I remember watching one. Oh, it was with
What?
Can't remember. It was I know it was if it's the one I think you're talking about, because there was only one I remember, and that was with the ticket booth lady who had been there since the very beginning, Miss Lightning.
Yep. 103 years old and still selling tickets to the Daytona 500.
And still extremely healthy for her age.
Yeah. Yeah, she's been selling tickets there at Daytona since 1949 at the racetrack. But before that, she was selling tickets on the beach.
Yep. Since pretty much the beginning. So, they have now named the ticket booth after her, which I believe was was a nice thing.
Absolutely.
I liked that interview. That was very sweet, very nice. Yeah.
Gives me hope.
It does.
103 years old, man. That's amazing. It's still working. I mean, she probably could have retired, 30 years ago, but she still enjoys her job.
Yep.
I saw somebody, I can't remember who it was. I should write down who it was when I see these tweets. But somebody on Twitter said that she should run for president because since she runs such a tight ship. And I said, yep. And I said, yeah, let's make Dale Jr. the Secretary of Finance because he ain't going to spend nothing.
That's a good point.
Between the two of them, we could get this nation out of debt real quick because they wouldn't spend nothing on nothing.
Exactly, yeah. I would agree with that. That is true.
So I'd rather see Dale Jr. be the president of NASCAR, though. So back to the Xfinity race. Get the restart with, I think it was 11 laps to go, something like that. And Riley Herbst gets busted for laying back on a restart.
He did.
This is where I have in my notes that the cautions have become ridiculously long, because that was when they had really kind of gotten a little out of control with adding a lap.
Yeah.
for debris. But man, of course, then there was another caution for several of the cars. That one took out Cole Custer, who was in contention, Justin Allgaier, who was in contention. The 10, the 26, and the 44 also got caught up in that. Took some contenders out.
Yep.
Of course, Riley, they were talking about Riley Herbst was going to have to pit. Was he going to be able to pit? Because he was still out front. And Cole Custer got a hit. I think it was from the 26 that was a little aggressive. It was coming out of the corner. It was looked like he was a little too far to the left. Sage Karam was a little too far to the left because when he bumped the double zero car just turned dead right into the wall.
Yeah, pretty much.
So knocked out a bunch of contenders, but at the same time, Austin Hill had to pit on the previous caution for a flat tire. This put Austin Hill back up towards the front. Damaged race car. He's had a flat tire. And now he's back up towards the front. So can you count him off? I mean, you can't count him out.
No, you can't. He's still there.
Restart with 3 to go. Man, I was pumped about this restart. You had Jordan Anderson Racing in first and second spot. You had Ryan Sieg in fourth. I mean, you just a lot of independent Cinderella stories up here up front. Then of course you had Sheldon Creed, you had Austin Hill, Sammy Smith. I can't remember right now who all was in the top 10 at the time, but you still had your usual teams.
Mm-hmm.
But then you had these smaller teams. Jordan Anderson Racing, huge fan of Jordan Anderson. I mean, I wish his team nothing but success. Ryan Sieg, I talked about him earlier and how much I'm a fan of Ryan and what he's doing up there. And man, on that restart, if the 31 and the 32 don't pull the dumb move that we talked about with Spire, and they hook up and they get out too far.
Yep.
But the pack was able to catch them. Austin Hill and Sheldon Creed. That's a story right there.
That is.
Remember what happened at Martinsville last year? They basically took each other out of the championship. Austin Hill spoiled Sheldon Creed's announcement that he was going to Joe Gibbs Racing. There were some words between Andy Petrie, who happened to be in the booth for the Xfinity race, and Sheldon Creed. There were some hurt feelings. And here they find themselves at Daytona. Austin Hill still with RCR. Sheldon Creed's moved over to the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, and now they need each other again. Ryan Truex was up there. So we've got our usual suspects, and then we've got super speedway surprises with Sieg and Anderson's team. And I think Sieg and I think the Anderson team could have caught back up. But I think if I remember right, it was Sammy Smith was on the back of the 38, 39 car and got into him a little too hard and spun him. And that brought out, well, what should have been the caution. But they didn't call the caution, so they came back to the line. And Austin Hill wins for the third time in a row. He's won the season opener at Daytona. Guy can drive.
He can. That was very interesting, especially because he had all that damage early on. Coming back to win stage 2, and then coming back at the end of the race and winning the race. So that car had speed even with the damage they had on it.
Yeah, well, having that ECR engine under the hood,
Yeah,
that
but
definitely helped too. Uh, and I texted this to you. I don't know if you noticed it, but coming to the checker flag, we got Adam Alexander, Michael Waltrip, and Andy Petrie in the booth. Sheldon Creed is running second. Austin Hill is winning, and Adam Alexander. I know he's human. I know he makes mistakes, but he called Sheldon Creed to the line as the victor 3 times.
oops.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Adam Alexander. I know there are some people out there that love him. I don't know if he got caught up in the excitement or if he was looking at the scoring monitor or what he was looking at. I don't believe they were at the track, which again, shame on Fox. Fox, you should have your commentators at the track. I don't care if it's for Xfinity, if it's for Cup, if it's for ARCA truck. They need to be at the track because your cameras, and I want to talk about this more when we talk about the Daytona 500, but your camera shots are lacking. There's too many close-up shots. There's too many in-car camera shots. There's too many bumper cameras. But they're still not catching all the action on the track. So if you've got your commentary people at a booth in Charlotte, North Carolina, when the race is going on in Daytona, Florida, they can't see the whole track. So if something happens, they can't. Because there was even one caution. The booth called for debris, but there was a wreck on the backstretch with like 4 cars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they'd have been at the track, one of them would have seen it, that there was a wreck on the back. If your camera was a little more on point, they caught the wreck on camera.
Yeah.
That should have been, as soon as the caution came out, they should have went, because the producers and the directors, they know that if there's cars spinning on the backstretch at Daytona and the caution comes out, that's where the camera needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
Not on the cars slowing down. So Fox, you got to do a little bit better with that. NASCAR Productions is supposed to take over next year for the Xfinity Series when it moves to the CW. They're building a multi-million-dollar media complex in Charlotte to produce these things. I hope they've at least got somebody at the track that can see the whole track, that can cue them in on what's going on, or they get a direct communication to NASCAR Communications or what. But this isn't the first time Fox has missed a wreck in a race.
Mm-hmm.
A couple years ago, Jessica Friesen, I believe it was at Knoxville, flipped her truck 3 times and they didn't even get a camera angle of it. I mean, a little quarter-mile dirt track, and they don't get this truck wreck flipping on camera. I mean, they got to do better if they're going to be carrying a professional sport like this. I mean, this would be like them missing Michael Jordan dunking the basketball in a championship game.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've got the camera on a fan, or they've got the camera on the opposing team's bench, or whatever they've got the camera on. And Michael Jordan goes and somebody hits the winning shot to win the NBA playoffs, and you don't see it because the cameras are focused elsewhere.
Right.
Basically the same type scenario we've got going on here. I don't think I've ever missed a game-winning shot on camera watching a basketball game.
No.
But or a game-winning touchdown on watching a football game. Because the camera was on a fan or was on something totally unrelated to what was going on. So they've got to do better with that.
Right.
So now we get to the main event.
Yeah.
The Daytona 500. I don't know about you, but I thought we had a truck race repeat was going to happen.
Seemed like it.
Because on lap 6,
We're wrecked.
we're wrecking. Keselowski had a bad hit on the rear bumper of John Hunter Nemechek, who hit Harrison Burton. He collected Austin Dillon, Jimmy Johnson, Ryan Preece, Carson Hocevar, Kaz Grala. But I guess before we talk about the race, let's talk about pre-race for a minute. Most of the pre-race TV stuff was done on Sunday.
Yep.
The NASCAR race day with all the interviews and stuff like that. But, NASCAR is the only sport that does a prayer and the national anthem beforehand. Now, some sports, some of your major league sports still do the national anthem. We won't talk about other songs that they sing that aren't the national anthem that are promoted as such. But NASCAR is the only sport that still has a prayer before every event. Still does the national anthem. I thought the prayer was good. The prayers are usually pretty good.
Yeah.
They had what branch was it that was singing? I don't even remember.
I'm not sure. It looked like by uniform, it looked like Army, but I'm not. I have to look that up.
Don't quote you on that, but either which way, man. I don't know if it was the sound system or the acoustics but for the Daytona 500, that was horrible.
That was very sad. I texted you and I said, "This is why we don't sing in the military." Um, I I feel bad, but if you're gonna have them, if you're gonna have a group of people sing, you got. I'm sure they did practice it, but it did not sound like it to me. But then again, it could have just been the sound system, could have been microphone placement. I don't know.
It sounded like one person was really loud and really kind of off key, and that's where the microphone was at.
Yeah.
Which that's usually what happens. You get one, and I'm not saying they were doing it on purpose. They probably didn't realize that they were off key. But the person that's off key always sings the loudest, and they always seem to be closest to the microphone. But I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I mean, it happened. We are thankful to our men and women who are in service to our country. But I'd rather see them flying airplanes or manning ships or manning munitions than singing the national anthem.
Yeah.
But that flyover was pretty cool.
The flyover was cool.
They buzzed them several times. They normally only do it once, but they actually yesterday, I don't know if the pilots were in a really good mood or what, but they buzzed them several times. And somebody got a shot of them going over the tower where all the spotters are on top of the tower. And Freddie Kraft texted this morning. He says, "I think these guys try to get closer every year." But the flyover usually is. That's usually one of the coolest things. I remember when you were in Pensacola and we came down there and we got to witness the Blue Angels practicing.
Yep.
Man, that was just watching them practice was pretty
Yep.
daggum awesome.
It's a lot of really cool just walking out, outside, from working, and you look up and you're like, oh, the Angels are practicing, seeing all the different formations, and it was different every time because there was some days it was just one person, there was some days it was all of them, and some days it was just two or three of them. So
Nope.
it was always something different. You were watching them practice, so seeing that was a lot of fun. So flyovers are really cool to see. And honestly, if you get the chance to go to an airplane show, go to it. You're gonna see a lot of cool
I,
stuff.
yeah, I agree. I knew the first time we were down there in Pensacola visiting you, we had went to Walmart. They're not too far from the base, and they were practicing, and they flew over in formation, and then they came back over in formation, and a couple minutes later, one individual plane came back really, really, really low.
Yeah, hey, he did.
uh, and then he circled around and he came back low again, coming back. That was pretty cool.
Yep.
Um, getting to see him up close like that. But the flyover, that's one of the things that I've always enjoyed about watching NASCAR races is the flyover, because you get to see different planes, different types of flyovers, different formations. That was pretty cool. And of course, a lot of the pre-race stuff was canceled because of the rain.
Hmm.
A lot of the celebrities that were planning on being in attendance were not there, but there was one that was there. Um,
Yep.
Hollywood Rock.
Yep. Dwayne the Rock
Uh,
Johnson, big
yep.
WWE Hall of Famer, um, big time actor, producer. Now being in charge of the UFL that they advertised a lot. Um, so
Think maybe they
uh,
were pandering.
I don't know. But seeing him give the command was actually pretty cool. He gave a really good command, starting off with
It was
with
it was definitely in his wrestling character.
oh yeah, 100%. And I loved it because his wrestling character was awesome. That's what he's mostly known for, from a lot of people. Yeah, people know him from his acting career as well, but most people know him from his wrestling career. So, um,
We've had some really good commands. But I don't think anybody's ever going to top Adam Sandler and Kevin James.
no, not
Uh,
at all.
and they've done it several times. The best one they did was the one where they had Shaq.
Yep.
Shaq was, I don't know if you remember that one.
That was a while
That
ago,
one
but yeah.
that wasn't too long ago. That after you had really started watching the races though.
Yep.
But uh, you got to get the season started out right
Right.
with your command. If the people giving your command get up there and they're boring and they put no emphasis, and I've heard them, and you've heard them. Commands, it's like the person just got up to the microphone and just barely got the words out. Driver, start your engines.
Yeah.
I mean, just you. If you're doing that at a mid-season race at Texas or Gateway or Kansas or whatever, okay, but you cannot do the Daytona 500 with a boring, sleepy command.
I agree. Well, I
Because
definitely agree.
you got to get that adrenaline pumping at lap one.
Right.
The problem was we got the adrenaline pumping with the command, and then we rode around for 20 minutes before
Yeah.
we got the green flag. I had a couple commercial breaks before we got the green flag. Um, One reason why I didn't, and I try not to. I try to watch the 500 live, but most of the races the rest of the year I will watch most of them on a 30-minute time delay, so that I can fast forward through and I'll eventually catch up to live TV because there's so many daggum commercials.
Yep.
But some of the races, like the Xfinity race, I won't even watch it till it's actually really over, and then I'll go and watch it so I can skip the commercials,
Yeah.
because I can watch it in half the time because I skipped the commercials. Um, and I know they have to check. They have to check their tachometers. They have to check their um, pit road speeds and all that stuff that they've got to do. I know that there's stuff that NASCAR has to do before the race gets going. They got to make sure all the transponders on the cars are working and all that stuff. I understand that, but 20 minutes from command to green flag on a rain delayed race just doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, I would agree.
But we get caution on lap 6. Then we get a long green flag run.
Yep.
And I've got in here in my notes, I got that there's still too many in-car camera shots. There's too many close shots. Show us some field racing. And when they were doing their little insert clips where they showed like the Ryan Blaney thing and the Kyle Busch thing, and they're showing them 3/4 screen, 3/4 screen, and they got the race up in the top small corner. Kind of like what the video I'm looking at now. You take up 3/4 of my screen, and I've got this little square in the top corner.
Yeah.
That's where they got the racing, and they got this big part of the screen taken up with all this stuff. Swap that. Put the racing in the big part of the screen and all this little stuff in the small screen. I'm still going to watch it. I'll still pay attention to it, but I'm watching the race to watch the race.
Right.
The driver profiles, driver insights are awesome. They're great. I love those. I love the commentators telling the stories of the drivers, where they came from, how they got to where they're at. I love that. But I don't need it to be 3/4 of my screen. I need it to be 1/4 of my screen.
Right. I agree. It's cool to know, when they ask personal questions like that with the drivers, but don't make the race smaller than that. Either make it even or make the race or make, the race bigger, because that's what people are going to watch. We're going to be watching the race. Yeah, we'll be listening to whatever the drivers are saying in the little interview or whatever, but we're going to still be our eyes are still going to be on the cars on the racetrack.
Exactly. So then we come to and of course we're getting, and Mike Joy has explained this several times on Twitter, they front load commercials. So you get a whole bunch of commercials at the beginning of the race so that you don't get so many at the end of the race. And I appreciate Fox doing that, but we still got commercial overload.
Yeah.
But again, we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But then after that caution comes out, because everybody pits and takes fuel, now we're doing fuel mileage racing. Saw a lot of industry insiders yesterday. And when I say industry insiders, I'm talking about former spotters, former drivers, current media people talking about why are we, or not really media people, but of course the media people was expressing views of other people that they were seeing on Twitter. Why are we fuel mileage racing in stage 1 of the Daytona 500? My answer to that, the reason we're fuel mileage racing in stage 1 of the Daytona 500 is because we have stage cautions.
Right.
If you want to get rid of fuel mileage racing in the Daytona 500, get rid of stage cautions. Throw your green, white checkered flag at the end of the stage. Calculate your points for your top 10 drivers. Give your playoff point to your stage winner. But don't throw a yellow flag. Don't have a caution flag. Who knows? I mean, we have went. I don't think that we haven't at Daytona, but Talladega a couple times we have went caution free. And when we went caution free, what happened? The drivers had to pit. They had to do green flag pit stops. It broke the field apart. It separated the pit crew, the top pit crews from the bottom pit crews. It sometimes set strategy of the race. But if you want to get rid of fuel mileage racing, especially at Daytona and Talladega, get rid of your stage brakes. Cautions. So I don't know how you feel about that, but that's just me.
I like the stage racing because it makes it a lot more interesting because you see these drivers racing for actual points throughout the whole race and not just points at the end of the race. Because before the stage racing, it was kind of like, we're gonna go around the track. But when it came down to a certain time of however many laps were left in the race, that's when everyone took off. That's when everyone started racing. The stage racing kind of changed that, um, to make the drivers go at it almost the whole race. But I agree. I think we don't need the yellows in between these stage races. Let them keep racing. If they need fuel, they can pick green flag pit stops. It changes strategy. It changes up everyone's strategy when you got 2, 3 cars that need to pit, and you're drafting with them at Daytona or Talladega. Um, I think the cautions are just kind of time consuming, and it makes planning and strategy easier for some people, but I don't. To me, I wouldn't want it to be easy. Like, make me think, make me plan out. If this is what happens, this is what we'll do. But if this happens, this is what we'll do. Um, Based on either a caution coming out or we stay green, not just, oh, the stage is coming up, we'll pit then. That's my opinions on it, but that's me. So
Well, you kind of saw some of the strategy play out. I can't remember if it was the first stage or the second stage coming to the end when the Fords pitted with Josh Berry and several and Noah Gragson and several of the Fords pitted. They took tires. And Kevin Harvick pointed out, which by the way, Kevin Harvick phenomenal in the booth.
I would agree.
But Kevin Harvick pointed out, he says now they're taking their tires now. When we get to the stage break, everybody that just pitted for fuel is going to have to come in and get tires. These guys that are taking tires now will come back in, they'll get fuel, but they don't have to worry about changing tires. So that's going to give them track position. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, so strategy in that way worked out. Um, strategy in, I want to say the drivers that had to pit, they were going to have to pit in stage one, kind of messed up all the strategies of those who weren't planning on pitting because they slowed the field down so much that everybody behind them was like, well, this is just helping. This isn't helping them. This is helping us. And when their crew chiefs picked up on that, they were like, okay, let's just go. We got to pit anyway. So let's just go and make them run their stuff out. And it ended up when they picked up, and I want to say Mike Joyce said they were going 3 seconds a lap faster. And they picked up that and they started going. Everybody ended up pitting, which threw a whole, I think, monkey wrench in all their plans to begin with because they hadn't planned on pitting again.
Right.
They pitted on lap 6. They were going to make it, or at least they were going to try to make it. Now they've all got to pit again anyway, which totally changed the complexion of where they were running because all of the Chevrolets that ended up finishing up front in it was stage one that they were doing. All the Chevrolets that ended up in the front of stage one and even stage two were up there because they stayed back. They let everybody else pit. Then they pitted. Then they came out in front of them. And it just worked out really well for the Chevys when it come to pitting.
Oh yeah.
To strategy anyway. I don't. I've never been a fan of fuel mileage races. Michigan has always been one of those that's a fuel mileage race. Charlotte, the Coke 600 has been a fuel mileage race in the past. Before stage cautions, well, even after stage cautions, those two have been fuel mileage races. But um, I've had drivers win them on fuel mileage. I've had drivers lose them on fuel mileage.
Right.
It's just, and it's strategy, and I like strategy. That's one of the reasons I like auto racing in general, is because of the strategy. I mean, basketball, there's really no strategy. Your strategy is to put the ball in the hoop more times than the opponent.
Right.
Um, you know, football is just your strategy is to score more touchdowns than the opponent, and all of your sports like that. Racing requires a strategy of, not only do I have to do better than not only do I have to beat them to the line, but I got to figure out how to do it. It's
Right.
not as simple as putting a ball in the hoop or hitting a ball or kicking a ball or whatever. um, but the strategies, I think, on that first round of green flag pit stops, the Chevys did a better job um, staying together than the Fords and the Toyotas. The Fords and the Toyotas seem to have gotten separated on their pits. I know a couple of them had problems on pit road, but it just seemed like the Chevys did a better job on that round.
Yeah.
Definitely got them out front, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Got him out front and got him a stage win, winning stage one with Elliott, which I was super happy about. I was like, now
Yep.
that's a way to start out the season, with the stage win. So especially coming back from last season due to injury, and then during the off season he had shoulder surgery as well. So it's good to see that Elliott's still wheeling that car and showing speed at Daytona, along with everyone else, of course. Um,
Of course, I was aggravated because William got bumped.
William did get bumped, but still in the top five. He was fifth,
Yep.
so for the stage. The
All
odd
four, all four of the Hendrick Chevys were in the top five in that stage.
Yep,
Uh,
the oddball was Ross Chastain in the one and in third. But
he was still a Chevy. So, I
it's
mean,
still a Chevy, so their Chevys were together. They pulled it off at the end of stage one. So
well, and let's talk a little bit off topic for a minute. Ross Chastain, uh, in that Busch Light car, we're used to seeing Kevin Harvick
yeah,
um, with the Busch Light. I kind of really, I like the paint scheme that they have on Chastain. Of course, I'm still a number in the door, center of the door guy, but
yeah, I would agree.
one car, and Kevin even talked about it in the broadcast. I think the Busch Light sponsorship fits Chastain really well. I'm just still not used to seeing that sponsor on another car. I mean, they've been with Harvick for so long. I think 2016 was when they switched from Budweiser over to Busch. So he's been
Hmm.
with that. He's had those colors on his car for a while. So, um, but it was weird seeing some of those sponsors on some of those cars that we're used to seeing on other cars.
Right, yeah. It definitely it shows you that the sport has been changing, and as some drivers move around, sponsors move around, it just shows you that even as one driver wraps up his career, as Kevin Harvick did, another one is pretty much just beginning, as with Ross Chastain. He's been in the he's been in NASCAR for a while, but not very long in Cup Series. But he's already shown that he has a lot of potential. Um, just the way he drives that one car.
I think the number fits him too. Um, Depending on which way you could go, he could be one of any of two number ones.
Yeah, I would agree.
He could be number one as in first place, or he could be number one as in you're not very popular right now with me.
Yeah, Um, he has that mentality, but I think as he's um, been as he continues to be in the sport, he's growing to be a lot less um what how do I word this, singular, and he's working more with other people instead of just booting them out the way like he used to and going for it. Um,
Well, and you were around when Ross. I really didn't like Ross that much. His Xfinity series, some of the back when Chip Ganassi was first giving him a shot in the Xfinity series, and him and Harvick had that little tangle. I want to say it was at Darlington. I didn't like Ross very much. I thought Ross was a little, um, for the stage that he was in his career, I thought he was a little too conceited, um, because his results at that time didn't match his attitude. He had an I'm a winner, I'm a superstar attitude, but he had yet to prove that he was a winner and a superstar. Obviously, he is a winner. He is a superstar in NASCAR, and will be for a long time to come. And I hope that he has success, because I think Ross having success in NASCAR will help move NASCAR into the next decade or so. But when Ross first came around, man, he had that I'm a superstar and nobody's going to get in my way, not even if you're a megastar. I'm going to run over you. I'm going to run through you. If you bump me, I'm going to bump you. Um, you know, but he has matured, and now he has every right to have that kind of attitude because he's earned it. He's there. But we are seeing Ross mature right before our very eyes, because now, while he could have that attitude, now he has the exact opposite attitude. He's still very aggressive on the racetrack. Um, he's still very aggressive with his words. He's still a, um, take no crap type driver on or off the racetrack. That's still good, but now he's more of a, you know, I'm on the same level as you because I've earned my way here. You've earned your way here. So now if we're bumping and banging, it's fun.
right, exactly.
So Ross is growing on me.
I, he as we've said, he's matured a lot. So and when you mature, a lot of people think of you differently, because it just shows that you understood where you were and you improved yourself to get to where you are now, and that always tells a lot about a person. So I like Ross too. He also being a Chevy driver helps, um, and then Harvick being a big part of him getting the Bush sponsorship also definitely helped. So I'm excited to see where his career goes, um, as he begins to be an uprising star, along with
Yep.
some of these other drivers. So
So then we get to crank it up for pit stops.
I was
That's
very
gonna be hard.
confused.
Yeah, I was too. Um, I don't. Maybe they wanted us to hear the tire guns,
Maybe I don't
um,
know.
spotters, whatever. But I need my pit reports. I mean, I need to know what's going on in pits. So then we've got our restart. Um, more and more commercials.
Yep.
Uh, another 3/4 screen for them to talk about stuff. More commercials, more commercials, more commercials. Then we get to the fact where Joey Logano gets passed by the 38. The 38 comes up on him to take the lead, and Joey gets mad because he's not leading. because he's like, I want to control this race.
Right. Yeah.
And Dylan is like, but what you're wanting to do isn't working for my team, so I want to control this race. And Joey was mad. I got in here that Joey's mad that he's not leading.
That's pretty much how it seemed like as they were talking about it.
I mean, of course, we go to commercials, so we really don't get much in depth on that because, again, commercials are stupid here.
Yeah. Very.
Uh, then we got down and let's see, one lap 117. I've got everybody's back together after the pit stops for the second stage. Another commercial.
Yep.
And then, like I was talking about with the promotion stuff, again, Fox, promote what you want whenever you want to, but show me full screen racing. And I got to give the booth credit a lot of the booth credit here with Clint Boyer, Kevin Harvick, and Mike Joy, talking us through the pit stops and what's going on, and all the things that's going on. But a lot of times they have a tendency, for whatever reason, to not talk about cars in the back of the pack. We did get regular updates on what was going on with Jimmy Johnson. We got regular updates of what was going on with Michael McDowell. We got regular updates of what was going on with Austin Dillon. On lap 126, they even told us about Justin Haley's fuel pump problem that unfortunately pretty much put an end to his day. He was running really well.
He was
in that Rick Ware car, which is surprising, but I know in our season preview podcast that we did, we talked about how if Rick Ware is going to show us something, this is the year they're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
They have a very close alignment with Roush Keselowski Fenway Racing, Roush Fenway Keselowski, whatever it's called, RFK. They get the same engines. The Roush Yates engines that all the Ford teams get. They got the technical alliance. They get a lot of information from RFK. So basically now, and they've got a driver the caliber of Justin Haley. They've got crew chiefs, quality crew chiefs. They need to show us something this year, and they have. In the Clash, before he had another part break, Justin Haley was running 8th.
Yep.
In Daytona, he's running top 10. He has a fuel pump issue. And these are problems that the team don't have anything to do with these. They don't build the engines. The part that broke, I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was a suspension part or a transmission part that broke at the Clash. The teams don't control those. They don't build those things anymore. So far, despite their finishes, I've got to say that with the 51 team, of course they had Riley Herbst in the 15 car, so he's going to run good with the equipment that he gets. But I'm impressed with them so far, and you can tell that the broadcasting partners are watching them too, because they're pointing out when he's doing well. They're pointing out, like, last year we would have never known, except for on the rundown, that Justin Haley was off track because of a fuel pump.
Yep.
They never would have mentioned it. So kudos to them for doing it. Blaney wins stage 2. Surprise there, not really.
Yeah, not really. Him and Cindric. Cindric was in the lead, but they're towards the end of the stage. Blaney pulls out and goes around Cindric and takes it. Quite interesting how I thought his teammates fought for a stage win, but
Yeah, they did go at it there, didn't they? I mean,
they
that was, but that's what stage. I think going back to what you were talking about, stage racing, it forces everybody to race. That's what stage racing does.
yep.
It forces teammates to have to make a decision. Am I going to be a teammate, or am I, or am I going to go out here and get everything that I can for my team? And we saw that even in stage one with Chase Elliott and William Byron and
Kyle
Kyle
Larson.
Larson with Bowman. I mean, they were all running up front, and they had to make a decision.
Yep.
Are we going to push or not? And they decided not to push each other. It worked out well for all of them. All of them finished in the top 5, but it does bring into that conversation: are you a teammate or are you a competitor? And I'll go back to my thoughts. And I didn't mention this when we were talking about the ARCA race. Um, I'm a teammate. If I'm in Cup, I'm a teammate Monday through Saturday. The green flag falls on Sunday. I'll be if it's a track like Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta, where I need you to help me get to the front and you need me to get to the front, I'm your teammate. Again, the last 10 laps, I am not your teammate. Especially not on the last lap. On the last lap, I am another competitor.
Right.
And if you're going to be my teammate, that's fine, because I'm going to beat you every time. If you're going to beat me, you're going to have that mindset of I'm going to be your competitor. Last 5 laps, Daytona 500, I'm your competitor. I am not your teammate. That's just kind of my mentality of this. Now we go to a track like Martinsville, you're on your own. When that green flag falls at the beginning of the race, you can come talk to my crew chief about my setup, but I ain't doing nothing for you. So anyway, interesting that happened on that. 2 things I want to talk about at that stage break. We get a side-by-side ad being a stage caution.
Yeah. I feel like that was kind of a waste.
Perfectly good side-by-side commercial spot.
Hmm.
Could have saved that for later in the race when they did a full screen commercial break.
Yeah. I agree. But it's Fox. Are we really that surprised they did it that way?
This is true. Kyle Busch, left front tire gets hung up under the car. Lug nut falls off. The tire does not come off, so that means there's not going to be any penalties this week. He was able to some way, somehow keep the
Roll his
tire under that
way.
2.5 miles.
Yeah.
Get back to pit road. Didn't damage the car. Didn't damage the car because he was running up front.
Right.
I really. Then they got back to racing, and didn't take them long to go 3 wide. And then we get a Wendy's skit for the biggie bag.
Yeah.
Several people on Twitter is like, I don't really think this is appropriate time for a Wendy's skit while they're racing 3 wide. So 22 to go. We get pit stops. Does not take the whole field long to get back together. Get 24 to go. We get a caution because the 6 and the 22 are all over the place. I mean, they're swapping lanes together. They're swapping lanes separate. That was the wreck where basically chaos broke out. And because of all their swapping, there was another big wreck.
Yep. Quite big.
Uh, yeah, that led to the wreck where Alex Bowman got into the back of the 24 car. The 24 car got into the 6 car. The 6 car got into the 22 car. The 22 car and the 6 car got into the rest of the field.
Yep. Pretty much. But the way they were, the 22 and the 6, the way they were weaving through changing lanes constantly, that was putting a big factor on the way the draft was working, how the wind was hitting every car, because every time they changed, it would switch up how it was working,
Uh-huh.
which caused the once the 48 had bumped into the back of the 24 while drafting, 24 got loose and the 6 goes flying to the 22 along with the rest of the field. Um, I saw it coming, just the way it was,
Yeah,
because they were 3 wide while doing this. So you're
yeah.
weaving through 3 wide. You got to expect something like that to happen.
And the fact that it didn't happen earlier was kind of shocking.
Yeah.
But again, we have an example of, yes, they were changing lanes, but we've got another bump draft go wrong, bumping in the wrong spot, wrong place on the track, not centered up with the bumper. And we know the Chevy still, they've got more of a rounded front, but they've still kind of got a point somewhat on the nose of the Camaro. And they don't, if you're not perfectly lined up, and when you look at the replay, Bowman was not lined up behind the 24 car.
No, he was not.
The way the air between the 22 and the 6 and the cars that were around them between and the one car and the way everything was moving around, the 24 car was already out of control. It wasn't a wreck out of control, but when Bowman hit him, it put him in a wreck out of control. And if the 6 car hadn't been there, the 24 car would have went sliding through the infield. And the 48 car probably would, but they still probably would have been a crazy wreck there. But Blaney took another hard lick.
He did.
In that wreck. I mentioned earlier that the in-car showed him grabbing his wrist. You see, really, Danica Patrick started this in the stock car ranks because with her IndyCar background, when an IndyCar wrecks, they teach you before you hit the wall in IndyCar, you let go of the steering wheel and kind of, cross your arms and kind of, because it keeps your hands from your wrists from getting broken, your arms from getting broken, because that steering wheel will grab your arm. And we saw it grab. Ryan didn't let go. He did on Thursday night. You see him, as soon as he starts to spin out, he lets go of the steering wheel.
Right.
Last night, he did not. It wasn't until after the first impact that he let go, and that's just kind of because the impact ripped the steering wheel out of his hand, and you saw him grab his wrist.
Yeah.
They talked about it on commentary. Luckily, in his interview, he said that he was fine. So, but he wasn't the only one that took a big hit in that. Brad's hit, Joey's hit, pretty hard licks. But you know what? We didn't have a single car in this. Remember last time we were at Daytona, Ryan Preece went for that crazy ride on the backstretch.
Oh yeah.
Flipping, where the window net came off, the roof latch got ripped off. I mean, did not see any of that this Daytona 500, and I'm glad to see that. I think it was in the 500 last year, wasn't it, that Harrison Burton flipped over? I want to say it was either in the 500 or it was in the duels, but I want to say it was in the 500.
It was one of the two, but I believe you're right. I think it was a 500 when he did go flipping.
So either way, nobody left the ground.
Yeah, that's good. Hard impact, but it was good to see everyone get out of the car and walk away, especially after seeing Blaney grab his wrist. hearing that he was okay, that was definitely good to know. So
Yeah, because I was worried because he's a defending champion, and if he would have had to miss some races because he broke his wrist at Daytona, it just really wouldn't have been a good look for NASCAR. And
no,
champions out because of injury
yeah.
in the race car. Yeah.
Uh,
So restart with 4 laps to go. Uh,
this is when my blood starts boiling.
right. Uh, and the thing was, these last 20 laps, we're sitting down, we're trying to eat dinner. That's the wrong time to try to eat. Is when the race is heating up like that and your adrenaline's pumping like that. Because I got one serving and I didn't get any more until after the race was over because I told your mom, I just said, she was like, "You can get more." I was like, "Well, I would, but I don't think I can eat anymore right now." Because, I mean, the adrenaline was going, my stomach, my nerves were going. I mean, you know, William Byron's up front, Chase Elliott's up front, Ross Chastain's up front. We've got the 2 car. The only car in the top 10 that's won the Daytona 500 is Austin Cindric, and he was in third or fourth. Um, we've got tore-up race cars that are still competitive with Noah Gragson and Chase Briscoe and several of the other drivers. We've got Corey LaJoie that's right there in the mix. I mean, and we've still got 4 laps to go, and a lot can happen in 4 laps at Daytona.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, the adrenaline's pumping. So if you're trying to eat at this point in time, I just want to say good luck to you. Um, Now, if your driver's already wrecked out and they've already done the interview at the Infield Care Center, you're probably not that worked up. But I mean, my favorite driver, William Byron's leading the race.
Yeah.
We got Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Austin Cindric. Uh, like I said, I mentioned LaJoie was right there in the mix. I mean, we got a top 10. We've got one that's won the 500. So, we've got a 90% chance that we're going to have a new winner of the Daytona 500. Actually, I'm going to say a 95% chance just because Austin Cindric, since his Daytona 500 win, hasn't shown us anything.
Right.
But he's there. I mean, who knows if he gets the right block at the right time, if he gets the right push at the right time. I mean, he could win it again. I mean, so,
And then if you look at it, Hendrick even had they had 30% of that of a chance to win because three of their drivers were right there in the top 5 with Byron leading, Bowman in second, Elliott was in fourth, I believe. And so, and this being their 40th Daytona 500, how can you not be like, come on, Hendrick, like you deserve this. It's got to be one of y'all.
Yeah.
Me personally, I was like, if it's not Bowman, we're good. But at the same time, being Hendrick, I'm like, hey, if Bowman wins this, it's big for Hendrick, which is, we like most of the Hendrick teams. So it would have been, it's cool to see that they have a big chance of winning their 40th anniversary at Daytona. So you're looking at this restart.
Yeah, and of course at the time I've got Ray asking me questions, because they're talking about the 40th anniversary, and he's like, "Wait, this team's been around for 40 years?" So he's asking questions, because at 9 years old he really doesn't understand a lot of what's going on. So he's like, "He's been racing for 40 years." I'm like, "No, that he has not been racing for 40. None of these drivers are even 40 years old."
No.
Much less been racing for 40
I think
years,
Denny Hamlin's the only one that's above 40.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he hadn't been racing in Cup for 40 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
But anyway, so I had to kind of explain to him that, it was 40 years ago that this was the first Daytona 500 for Hendrick Motorsports. So I'm gonna have to let him watch Days of Thunder so he can kind of get a cinematic idea of how Hendrick Motorsports started.
Yep.
Because that story is centered around a lot around. Speaking of which, I don't know if you've heard the rumors, but there's rumors of Days of Thunder 2.
There is. Ooh.
And NASCAR has said that they're all in. Tom Cruise has said that he's in. So maybe they might start filming it towards the latter part of this year. So that'll be kind of good. If we start seeing some strange cars show up for qualifying, with some, well, they can't use the 51 anymore. They can't use the 18 anymore. They can't use, so they're going to have to stick with the 46. Maybe they can borrow some of Talladega's Knights numbers and go with the 26.
Yeah. But that'd be
And the
really cool to
61.
see.
But yeah, there is rumors that Days of Thunder 2 could be doing. It could be in the works. But hey, with the next gen, give me a Talladega Nights 2 too. I'll take it. Even though that was totally making fun of NASCAR, but that's okay. If we can't laugh at ourselves, who can we laugh at?
Exactly, that is true.
So, but we get to restart with 4 to go, and then on lap 199, coming to the white. Surprise, surprise. And they do it in numerical order. The number 1 and the number 2 get together.
Yep.
And wreck coming across the line. William Byron wins the Daytona 500. Ray said that my response for William Byron winning the Daytona 500 reminded him of your response when Chase Elliott won his first race at Watkins Glen.
I could see that. I could see that.
So, very exciting. But there seemed to be some controversy with this because there's a lot of people on Twitter that were saying that Alex Bowman was ahead at time of caution. And everybody's questioning, well, how does NASCAR make these decisions? How does NASCAR do this? How do they know who won the race? When did the caution come out? All of this. TV showed an angle from Alex Bowman's car as to when they came over the start-finish line. William Byron's clearly ahead. When you see the lights come on the track, Alex Bowman is ahead. So you've got to wonder, how do they make the call? Mike Joy explained this last year when they had a wreck coming to the line. That NASCAR will use all video and photos at the time of caution. When they have a button in the tower. When they press that button, it puts a timestamp on scoring. It puts a timestamp on videos. It puts a timestamp. It puts a timestamp on photos because they've got cameras that are basically steadily taking photos.
Mm-hmm.
And it sets the caution lights up. There is a delay from them pressing the buttons to the lights coming on, just like when you flip your light switch at home. That's quarter of a second, half a second delay between flipping the switch and the light coming on.
Yeah, me working in the electrical field, I understand that there is a slightly. It may not seem like much, but it's enough to make you think. Something could change just in that quick millisecond or two from the electricity moving through all the circuits for those lights to change.
So now everybody was bashing TV and bashing Fox, but I got to say Fox went with what they had. They cued into the radio to the NASCAR radios. The NASCAR radio called the 24 to the start finish line. Everybody's like, "That's not right. That's not right." Of course, some people like me are like, "Yay, William Byron won. I don't care. You're not going to find any excuses. You're not going to overturn this." But TV, I will come to Fox's defense here. Fox does not have everything that NASCAR has at the moment NASCAR has it. Because NASCAR has to look at it before they give it to Fox.
Right.
on their social media pages last night, during the Xfinity race, NASCAR posted the picture that they used, time-stamped at the second they pressed the button.
Yep.
Because there's not a delay from the button and the timestamp like there is from the button to the lights.
Right.
So they pulled up that picture. They showed it, where people are constantly getting on to NASCAR for transparency. I'm one of them. They showed the picture. The picture does show that the 24 car is ahead, not by much. I mean, I think if you'd had the cars side by side, maybe part of your index finger would have been sticking out. But it was far enough ahead that NASCAR called the 24 to victory lane. As a William Byron fan, I had to go break out one of the shirts today.
Yep.
Broke out one of his throwback shirts. I am ecstatic. We won the Daytona 500. The first race that he won in his Cup career was at Daytona in the fall race. I've been a William Byron fan since he got into a junior motorsports late model because he's sponsored by Liberty University. I have my master's degree from Liberty University, which is how I found out about William. Super, super, super excited that we've won the Daytona 500. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Most of my favorite drivers have won the Daytona 500. Mark Martin and Rusty Wallace are two of my past favorites that never won, but Austin Dillon's won it. Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s won it. Dale Earnhardt's won it. Kevin Harvick's won it. Now William Byron has won it. I still hold out hope that I'm betting that Chase Elliott gets him one before he retires. I'm trying to think who else, what other drivers, current Cup drivers, that I like that I want to get them a 500. But either which way, I'd love to see Brad. If William didn't win it last night, of course Brad was already wrecked out. But if William doesn't win, man, I would love to see Brad Keselowski win him a Daytona 500. That would be. And if he parties, I know he's older and he's married and he's got kids now that, necessarily he didn't have back when he won the championship in 2012. But if he parties for Daytona, like he partied for that championship, I don't think he's going to make it to New York City the next day to get on TV. William Byron made it this morning, but I don't see Brad making it if he wins that race. But I'm excited. I'm heartbroken for Brad again, because it just always seems like there's something. He always gets caught up. Usually, the past few years, it's been a mess of his own making. I hate to say it, but it's true. But yeah, Chase ended up finishing 14th. Bowman finished second. Corey LaJoy, very impressive fourth.
Yep.
Really impressed with that. So, but yeah, I'm happy.
I'm pretty happy too. Of course, we've said we'll try to be unbiased when it came to favorites and stuff, but it's still hard not to be excited when your favorite does win. So yeah, William Byron won Daytona 500. Super excited for that. Crazy finish for sure. But everyone was okay at the end of the day, and we had a winner. So some good racing throughout the whole weekend, or well, sort of weekend. It was mostly raining, but it was enjoyable. So
Yeah, well, I don't even want to talk about my fantasy picks. Uh,
um,
all 5 drivers I had, including the one I had in my garage, got caught up in that last wreck. Every last one of them. Um, and the sad thing is I had William Byron and Chase Elliott in my fantasy picks before qualifying and before the duels. And then after the duels, I went and I took Chase and William both out of my fantasy picks and stuck because I had Chase in the garage. I replaced him with Tyler Reddick, and then I replaced William Byron with Christopher Bell because I'm like, okay, everything in me, everything in the media, everything on the racetrack just showed me that Toyota's going to win this race. So I overloaded my fantasy picks with Toyota, and now I understand why I'm not a fan of Toyota, because every time I think of that, they burn me.
um,
Kind of like owning a Ford. Every time I've owned a Ford, it's burned me.
well, you're doing okay with the one you got now.
Well, okay, let's talk. You want to talk about okay with the one I've got now? What about back in August, in July, August when we're moving and it's 110 degrees outside and my air
Hmm.
conditioner blows up
That is true. That
just after the warranty expired?
yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So,
But yeah, so we have for y'all listening or watching, we have a little friendly fantasy going on between me, him, and another friend of ours. Um, the friend of ours got the most points. Um, I do not know who was in his lineup. In my lineup, I have Brad Keselowski, Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin, William Byron, and then Martin Truex Jr. And then I had Tyler Reddick in the garage. Sadly, I didn't get very. I still got a good amount of points, thankfully, thanks to having Byron and Wallace in my lineup. But
well, talk.
Brad got wrecked out, sadly. Same with Reddick and Truex, and Hamlin got caught up in the wreck. Um, but Byron winning it, I got a good amount of points, and then Bubba finishing in fifth. Um, I was super surprised by that, but very good for him.
Well,
Gave me some
been
points.
good. He's
He
been good at these tracks.
yeah
He's finished second at Daytona twice.
yeah
So,
he has.
uh,
They talked about that.
I'm trying to get my lineup to pull up. Here we go. I had Christopher Bell. Uh, put him in, like I said a few minutes ago. I put him in because he won the second duel. So I'm like, yeah, he's going to do me good. Denny Hamlin, because Denny always runs well.
Yep.
Ryan Blaney, because Ryan Blaney is a super speedway racer. I mean, he's got several wins at Talladega. Brad Kay, again, wishful thinking, and I did have Chase in my lineup. I thought I had taken him out. So, I know what I did. I replaced Joey Logano with Tyler Reddick in my garage. I had Joey in the garage, so I replaced Logano with Reddick and not Chase. But again, I overloaded with Toyotas because of just what they showed in the Clash. And I even took into account, believe it or not, I took into account the history of the race and what drivers were usually caught up in the wrecks.
Yep.
When I made this. And the reason I took William out is because before yesterday, William had not finished better than 21st in the Daytona 500.
Right.
The past few years since Joey won the 500 in, 2018, he has not done diddly squat. Well, he finished second last year, but other than that, he has wrecked out of every other 500. So I took him out because Tyler Reddick, he won the first duel. So I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna overload with Toyotas, but that will teach me again. Also, on the head-to-head things down below that on the fantasy, I lost every last one of them.
Yeah, I think I got one of them.
So I'm gonna have to go through, and it does have it now where we can change our picks. So I'm gonna have to go and change my picks. But yeah, that was thanks Toyota.
um,
I don't love you.
um, but it's interesting. This is why I don't gamble, because
Yeah,
I'd be
exactly.
broke if I did. Just because of what I go off of. Um, I'm kind of glad I kept Byron in my lineup, just to
I should,
have a
obviously.
Chevy, and then him winning on top of that definitely helped my points. I think I only got one of the matchup questions right, and that was Gibbs versus Logano. All the others I got wrong. um, but
I
overall,
somehow even messed that up
uh,
because with as well as the Toyotas did in the duels, and as well as Ty Gibbs raced, I knew Joey was going to wreck out. So that's why I took him out of my lineup altogether. So even in the head-to-head, I was like, Ty Gibbs is going to beat Joey.
yeah.
Wrong.
um, so overall, between the three of us, our friend is in first somehow. I don't know. I don't remember who's all in his lineup. I'll have to ask him who he had. I came
Kyle
in
Larson,
second.
Kyle Larson, Kyle Larson, Kyle Larson, and Kyle
I know
Larson.
Kyle Larson was in his lineup, but I'm not 100% sure who else he had. I had obviously Williams, so that put me in second, thankfully. You coming up third. And just for giggles and overall standings between everyone, okay, my ranking is 23,664th. And there are 16 people tied for first. Second place is 2 points off, placed in 17th. So that tells you how close this can be.
I'm like 88,000.
Obviously, it'll all change as we progress through the season. Some people will drop, some people will rise, but I thought it'd be interesting to have. So who can call what for fantasy wise. So maybe next season we might have a fantasy to include you guys. Um, we will see. That is down the road. So yeah, that pretty much covers everything for Daytona.
Well,
Um,
let's talk. I told you I had the stats for the commercial breakdown.
right.
Okay, so the total race time in minutes. Let's see, total minutes to complete race broadcast was 241 minutes. Y'all can do the math on the hours of that. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to read you the stats I've got.
A little. It's like.
109,
Go ahead.
195 minutes were race broadcast. Traditional commercials was 46 minutes, and side by side commercials was 11 minutes. So out of um, 241 minutes, we got almost an hour of commercials. Um,
That's a 4-hour broadcast with an hour of commercials.
yeah, I'm really not sure. I know they front load them like I talked about earlier. So in the first four or in the first half of the race, you get a lot more. But up until that last couple of stints, I don't remember getting 10 laps. Now I know it's Daytona. I know those laps are long, but 10 laps is almost 10 minutes on air. But can we not stay on air for 10 to 12 minutes without going to commercial break? I mean, football games do it quite a bit.
yeah.
Basketball games more than nothing, because if there's not a timeout called in the first 10 minutes of a basketball game, they don't go to commercial. They can.
Mm-mm.
You don't go to a commercial during a live basketball game.
No, you don't.
And I understand racing is different, but I just think that there was 129 commercials. Now this goes to what you talked about earlier. Total numbers of companies or entities advertised, 68. So there were 68 different brands that were advertised. Number of traditional commercials with the non-split screen was 108, and then the split screen was 63. Total number of companies that were advertised in the side-by-sides was 21. Total numbers that Fox did the side-by-side was 6. I'm to that point with motorsports. And again, I understand commercials. I understand the point of commercials. Why can we not have side-by-side commercials every commercial break? You're still getting your commercials, and we're still getting to watch the race.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do a 3/4 screen commercial and you give me a little box up in the corner with the race in it, that's fine. I want to watch the race. I'm to that point to where if NASCAR, and I know that they're moving to the CW next year. I know that they're going to have some races on Amazon starting in 2025 on Amazon Prime and TNT and TNT Sports and stuff like that. I understand. I realize that. I would be one of those who would be more than happy to pay for a streaming service that was commercial free to watch the race. At this point in 2024, and I know the WWE did this, and it worked really well for a long time. Now it's being absorbed by Peacock in the States, and Netflix is going to absorb it next year. A standalone NASCAR streaming service, 24/7 NASCAR content, live race broadcasts. You can put and you can put all the TV shows on there, the race hub and all that, and let Fox produce it, and Fox can get their advertising sales and stuff like that. But then put it on there for us, because I would watch a lot more content if it was ad free or limited ads. I don't even like to watch NASCAR Race Hub anymore because it's so ad heavy. It's 2024. Commercials don't have the impact that they used to.
Yeah.
I don't think so. That's just, and I know we keep on about the commercials, but I mean, I had people on Twitter last night commenting, and I was even commenting that these race breaks are interrupting my commercials. So anyway, that's enough for that. That wraps up week number 1. I did I send you the lineups?
I don't think you did.
All right, let me do that real quick. So y'all just hang with me. Talk about something while I send you this.
What is there to talk about? Well, we have Atlanta coming up, so we basically have another big draft speedway coming up. If y'all don't know, it runs weirdly. I don't know. We mentioned earlier that having two big drafting tracks back to back is going to kind of mess up with a lot of the smaller teams. But to hopefully it'll maybe it'll be okay. I'm not sure for some of the smaller teams. But we do have Atlanta up next. next week. I'm sure a lot of the teams are already scrambling Cup and Xfinity, just because they had to race yesterday on Monday. So a lot of those smaller teams are already like, oh no. Um, I'm sure some of the bigger
Well,
teams are kind of relaxed because they have more of a, they have a much bigger employment, with the crew. But those smaller teams don't have that very many people, so a lot of them are going to have to work super hard to prepare a car.
well, and there's only 32 trucks entered into the race at Atlanta, um, because of that. And there's 36 starting spots. This is the first time we've had a non-full truck field since Fontana 2020, in February of 2020. So even before COVID was the last time, because during COVID. Now, what does this tell you about the series, the health of the series? During COVID, we had full truck series fields. We had full Xfinity series fields. We had full Cup series fields. Here we are 3 years, 4 years later, and because of Atlanta being backdoor from Daytona, we've got a short truck field. I'm not really sure this was a good decision. So, did you get your
I,
lineups?
I got the lineups.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna do our fantasy picks. These are probably our driver will be in our fantasy lineup. But I didn't run this by you, but these are going to be the rules. For the trucks, we can pick whoever we want, every week. For the Xfinity series, we can pick whoever we want, every week. So the full field is available to us. For the Cup series, you can only pick a driver one time
Ooh.
until we get to the playoffs, and then at the playoffs it resets.
Okay.
And the reason that is because, with Xfinity, there's only 10 to 12 guys that could win every week. With trucks, there's 6 to 7 that can win every week. With the Cup field, there's 20, 25, 30 guys that can. And we're not necessarily picking the winner. We're picking who we believe is going to finish the highest. Um, so like if we start getting down to where we've got Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Michael McDowell to choose from at Bristol, we just got to pick whichever one of those two we think is going to finish higher than what than maybe the other person picked. So, and then we'll tally it up by the end of the year, and we'll see which one of us is better at picking. So let me pull up my truck roster and see who I'm gonna go for here. See, we're going to Atlanta. Who you got?
For
I'll let you pick first.
Atlanta, oh, I don't know. This is tough because, as I said, it's another drafting track. Um, I'm a I'm gonna go with Grant Infinger in the number 9. Um, their team showed some good speed at Daytona, so maybe Atlanta they'll continue and finish pretty good.
That's a good pick. He runs well. I'm going to go with Christian Eckes in the number 19. And this is where being able to pick any driver in the truck series is going to come in, because
Yep.
I will probably pick Christian multiple times this year, but I'm going to pick Christian Eckes for Atlanta. I just really think that he won a lot of races last year.
He did.
And to be perfectly honest with you, I think he's got something to prove this year. And not to us. I think he's got something to prove to the sport that he deserves an Xfinity ride next year.
I agree. I
All
agree.
right, who's your pick for Xfinity?
So Xfinity, um, this might be this might be a small curveball for you, but I'm gonna go with AJ Allmendinger in the 16.
That's a good. That's a good pick. What do you mean a curveball? AJ raced in both races yesterday and got a top 10
Yeah.
in both of them. I mean, come on now. That's not a curveball. A curveball would have been you picking like Anthony Alfredo or something. Um, I am going to go with again. This is where our picks are going to come in. Um, I am going to go with Austin Hill to go back to back.
Okay.
Uh, because with it being now, if it was the old Atlanta, I probably would not go with Austin Hill. I would go with Justin Allgaier or Sam Mayer or somebody like that, maybe Sammy Smith. But with it being a drafting style track now, I've got to go with the drafters. And my choices, I'm sitting here, I'm trying to decide, do I want to go with Austin Hill or Jesse Love? Austin Hill or Jesse Love? And I just don't think Jesse Love, he did really well the first stage of Daytona, but I don't think he's ready for Atlanta for a win. So I'm going to go with Austin to go back to back.
All right.
All right, now comes the difficult part.
Yeah. Cut.
Because now you remember, you only get to pick this driver one time until the playoffs start.
Right. Um. Well. This may be
luckily, there's
this may be an
luckily
early
there's
car.
36.
Do what?
Luckily, there's 36 drivers and 26 races.
Yeah. Um.
Full-time drivers, anyway.
So I'm I'm gonna call this early. I think Noah Gregson in
Oh
that
wow, you
10 car. I
think he's going to
I
win his second time out with Stewart Haas?
I he showed speed with that 10 car. He finished top 10 at Daytona. I think he could do it. The only reason I think he didn't do better than even though top 10 is still good, didn't do better at Daytona was because of the wrecking. I think
Uh,
he got caught up in one of the wrecks that gave him damage, but he still pulled off a top 10 in that car. So I'm going to go with it. So I'm gonna say Gregson.
I like that pick, and I loved his paint scheme for Daytona because it was pretty much the same paint scheme of his Bass Pro Shops Xfinity car when he was driving for Junior Motorsports. It's pretty much the exact same paint scheme. So uh, I like that pick, but you're going big with Stewart Haas right out of the gate. Um, this is between I don't really know if I want to use him now or wait. So I think I'm going to wait. I was going to pick Denny, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to save Denny for a short track or something like that. And I'm going to knock you off your chair because you'd never think I'd pick this guy, right? I'm going to go with Joey
Oh,
Logano.
Logano. Hmm.
Uh, just because, and this is a drafting track, but it doesn't have the slipping and sliding as much yet as Daytona has gotten to where Daytona has a lot of handling come into play, and it's not as wide as Daytona, so there's not as much moving around and switching lanes and swapping lanes unless you're up front. I look for him to qualify well, and because he qualifies well, if you go back and you watch the last few Atlanta races since they went to this style of racing, the only way you could get out front was through pit cycles. If you started out front, you stayed out front. which is how William Byron won it a couple of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and how he won it last year. It's how Chase Elliott won it in 21, or was it 21 or 22? It might have been 22 that Chase Elliott won at Atlanta.
One of the two.
But either which way, it was. When you get out when you get out front, you stay out front at Atlanta, just because the track doesn't allow for that third lane. Daytona and Talladega allow for more lanes. So that's all I got. I guess now we can wrap it up.
Yep. So this was kind of a long podcast, but we covered all four series, and it's Daytona, and it's the start of the season, and biggest race of the year. Everyone's coming off of off season, ready to go. So I feel like we covered a great amount of things here.
Probably won't talk about commercials the rest of the year, unless they're just that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, next week's Atlanta. So we'll come back. We'll talk about Atlanta, and we'll see who scores better in fantasy league next week. So I will let you. I will let you do our non-sponsoring shout-outs. So if you would like to go ahead with that.
So I actually made a list this time so I would get them all, and I would get them all right, because I missed a couple of them last time. But these are non-sponsor shout-outs. Most of them are other podcasts or people to follow on Twitter. If you don't listen to these podcasts, you are a fan of NASCAR racing, check them out. They're available on all podcasting mediums, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or iTunes, or a lot of them are on iHeartRadio and stuff like that. So wherever you get your podcast, check these guys out. A lot of them are up to date, today's stories. A lot of them are stories from the past, but listen, check them out. You got the Scene Vault podcast with Rick Houston and Steve Wade. I love listening to their interviews with older drivers and crew chiefs and people in the sport from back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even before then that are still alive. Dale Jr. Download with Dale Jr. His interviews are excellent. I love them. Actions Detrimental with Denny Hamlin. If you're not a fan of Denny, he will make you maybe a fan. I'm still I love his podcast. Just still not a Denny fan, just because he's in that Toyota. The Teardown with Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi is a new one that I've started listening to this year. They've been around for a while. Dirty Mo Media picked them up, but I started listening to them this year. Great rundown of the races and the race weekends. Door Bumper Clear with TJ Majors, Britt Griffin, and Freddie Kraft. They're spotters that give you an inside view of the sport as it's happening. A new podcast that launches today. I'm looking forward to it because it's my favorite driver, Happy Hour with Kevin Harvick. I remember he had a TV show that's called Happy Hour back on Fox some years ago, and it was very entertaining. It was very insightful, so I'm looking forward to the podcast as well. Also, if you don't follow Jordan, Bianchi, Jeff Gluck, and any of these guys that I've mentioned, if you don't follow them on Twitter, go and give them a follow. Follow Bob Pockrass if you want to keep up with whether the track has lights. If you want to keep up with the weather that's going on, you want to keep up with what's going on for your race weekend. Trey Ryan, I gave him a couple shouts out. If you want some statistics, he's the guy. He does an excellent job. And there's also Jayski. Jayski is on Twitter. They also have jayski.com. That is JAYSKI for you non-spellers. Go and check them out. They've got stats going all the way back. I mean, you can go and you can look at commercial breakdowns from the 1980s. You can go back and you can look at drivers and sponsors and all that stuff from back then. And then also our favorite non-sponsor that we hope someday to have a sponsor, CircleBDiecast.com. All of your diecast needs. Unfortunately, anything William Byron or Chase Elliott autograph that we want these days has to come directly from either their particular individual stores or through HendrickMotorsports.com shops. But for everything else, man, Circle B Diecast, that is your place to go for your diecasts.
All right, so yeah, make sure you check them all out. Everything will be linked down in the description below. So again, check them out. All super good podcasts. Very good people to keep tabs on Twitter. And then Circle B Diecast, like he said, some of the best customer service wise, some of the best diecast wise. Retailers out there. They're super good, super nice. If we have a problem, they're always on top of it. So now for the sponsored shout outs, of course. As usual, we have Swift grips, your analog grips for any gaming controller you may play on, whether it be Nintendo Switch, Xbox, or PlayStation. They're super sweet. They're basically silicone, but they're super nice. Keeps the analog sticks from getting sweaty. You can use code SterlingRider for 10% off at checkout with them. Of course, you got my favorite. You got Dubby. This is their hydration blend. I have recently tried. This is kind of their newer one. This is watermelonade. It's just watermelon and lemonade.
I want it.
It basically tastes like watermelon lemonade, but it's really good. This is their hydration mix, caffeine free, keeps you hydrated, super good. And then of course you got their Jitterless energy blend. This is their big energy tiers. It's basically the finest blue raspberries as it's described. Super good. Check them out. They've also have shakers, and then they've got merch, hats, sweatshirts, t-shirts. Go check them out. They just released a duffel bag, which I have. Dude, get you one of these. Go to the gym. Take it to the gym. Work out. Put your Dubby in it. I even got one of their hats. Super cool. Use code SterlingRider for 10% at checkout with them as well. And then you can see it on my head. We also got Rankest Rope Ranch wear. I'm wearing their brand new hoodie. It's the boot stitch hoodies. These are recently released. They've got hats. One of my favorite shirts, the Turn and Burn shirt. It's barrel racing. These shirts are now available in teal and pink. If you're a girl and you want to check them out, you can use code SilverDuke15 for 15% off with them. Super grateful to be a part of all three of these companies. They've all been amazing since the start, so make sure you go check them out. As I said, it'll all be linked down in the description below. So other than that, I have nothing else. Do you have anything?
See you after Atlanta.
So that's our wrap up for today. We will see you next week after Atlanta. You guys have a great week. Peace out. Right on. God bless.